Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Holistic Human Optimization Show. I am your host, as always, Ronnie Landis, and we have an incredible interview, conversation, dialectic to bring to all of you. I'm really excited to jump into this conversation with a very, very dear friend of mine, someone that I consider to be a big brother, a mentor, a friend, someone that I've known for, I want to say, around 10 years now, it feels like. Mr. Sacred Steve Adler. This will be the third interview we've done in the entire span of this podcast history. And, leading up to this, I was thinking about how we met and what a monumental moment in time for me that was, because you'd pretty much kind of seen my entire journey in this field of living foods and starting to become a speaker and writing books and getting into cacao alchemy and all the craziness that journey has ensued over the last decade. You really got to see it from the beginning, and we became fast friends. And so there was an event that I know you remember really well in San Francisco. Me and my dear friend, who you know very well, Mr. Hoy Sauce, we were kind of just running around doing shenanigans in the Bay Area, eating raw food, eating goji berries, and we didn't really know exactly what we were doing, or I didn't know what I was going to do with this. I had a feeling and inspiration. I was watching a lot of people like David Wolf and Gabriel Cousins on YouTube University, but I hadn't really plugged in with the community. And then lo and behold, David Wolf is doing an event in San Francisco, and I didn't know what to expect. I just said, yes, let's go. And I went there, and that's where I met you. That's where I met David for the first time. I met so many incredible people that are now close friends of mine. And I remember meeting you, and you were literally the personification and embodiment of the Willy Wonka archetype. And it was like a complete just reality timeline paradigm alteration in my entire life course. And I just remember that event, and that was just such an incredible moment in time for me. And we've become incredible friends and colleagues at one point, and just you've been such an incredible support system for me. You supported me and encouraged me all along this entire journey, and I just really value your friendship and the incredible service that you've really given humanity, which is you've kind of been, I don't even know, kind of is really the word. You've actually been holding it down for the cacao alchemy movement. You really helped start it. So that's, let me just say all that before we jump into this whole conversation.
Wow. Thank you, Ronnie, for having me on here again. It's a total blessing and honor to be here and share from the heart. And I just want to comment on that event long ago. I thought it was amazing, and it was great meeting you and Hoy and just making all the connections. And I seem to remember us getting together afterwards, watching, I think it was Beyonder.
Yes. Yeah.
Nickname, and he was literally shooting lightning bolts out of his fingers. And and so that was quite a sight to behold. And it kind of really sort of opens your eyes to what's possible in the universe, and what's possible for each and every human being. We are still sort of living in limitation for the most part. And that night, Beyonder showed us that literally it was possible for, an ordinary human being to, focus enough energy to literally shoot lightning bolts out of his fingers. And it was a small crowd gathering to witness this. And he actually shot lightning bolts right out of cacao beans into a wall. And everybody was watching it, and it was crazy to witness. But that was what we were plugging into at that time.
Man, I remember that moment so clearly. And what's interesting about that, just since you brought Beyonder's name up, we were many, many years after that. I was at All Lock with Dave the Raw Food Trucker. And Beyonder was there. So we go outside. He basically gives me a lightning bolt, or not lightning bolt. He gives me a light bulb, which basically a lightning bolt. He gives me a light bulb. It's obviously not plugged into anything. I'm holding it in my hand, And he says, okay, everyone watch this. He touches the light bulb and the light bulb goes on, and I'm holding it. And I'm like, man, is this safe? And then he takes his finger off, and then it goes limp again. And then he does that a couple times. I've never seen anything like it, bro.
A real life magician, right? I mean, he's actually channeling the energy to such a high level to where he's making things real where most people would never believe it in a million years, but everybody's witnessing it with their eyes. So yeah, there's a lot to learn out there in this vast world. And what we call miracles are just things that we really don't understand quite yet.
Yeah, and then eventually we call it science, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, well, so, it's interesting you bring up the whole subject on science because, I think a lot of people sort of don't truly understand what science is.
Right.
Really science is an ongoing dialogue between existence and truth. And that's the key thing. It's an ongoing dialogue. Science is not a subject. It's not a set of facts. It's not a set of formulas. It's none of that. It's actually a process. And the key thing to doing good science is innocent perception.
Right.
In other words, perceiving things innocently for what they are without preconceived ideas, judgments, filters, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's really the only way a scientist can be called a scientist. You can't really come into any sort of science project or any sort of science, or say you're performing science without that mental framework to begin with. And then on top of that, you've got to be honest about what you're perceiving. So it's not only innocent perception, but then it's honestly reporting what you're innocently perceiving. And so, yeah, there's so much out there saying, I mean, nowadays it seems like on the internet, especially on social media, people try and, back this and that with science, but what they're really trying to do is just back, their position with results from some sort of body of knowledge or some sort of set of facts or set of experiments.
Right.
So it's important to say that, it's not, science is confused. Science is actually a process. Science is not, it's none of that other stuff.
I'm so glad you brought this up. So science being a never-ending inquiry of the unbiased, objectified truth, not the subjective truth, not what we might prefer to happen, but to have such an honesty. Honesty is such a key word that you brought up. To have an honest inquiry about what is true or what's possible, regardless of what I want to happen or not.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not about agendas. You can't be performing science if you have an agenda. Those are diametrically opposed. Science is a process by which somebody arrives at a truth. And I want to kind of sort of correct you in that it's not really the objective, undeniable truth. There's no real such thing as that.
I felt that. I actually, when I said it, I kind of felt the little bit of incoherence in that word. So thank you.
Yeah, it's basically truth is a dynamic thing. Truth is kind of it's kind of I view it sometimes as this sort of golden dynamic thread that connects the inner and the outer, basically. And truth is found where that point exists, where that connection between the inner worlds and the outer worlds is. That point you could call truth, or you could call that point the point where you find a truth. And really what truth does on a practical level is it allows greater understanding of existence. It allows greater understanding of existence. It allows greater workability within existence. And that's why, sort of, the old saying, you shall know the truth and it shall set you free is so apropos. Because when you do arrive at a truth, you not only do you have a greater grasp of reality as existence, but you have typically more understanding and more tools to work gracefully within that existence. So, and the situation is, the truth is different for each and every one of us, because as individual, unique, souls, beings of God, if you will, or whatever, we all have our unique covenants. We all have our unique perspectives. We all bring different talents and experiences and knowledge and education to any sort of event or science project or whatever you want to call it. And so you bring your own, you arrive at your own truth based on what you're perceiving. One great example, for example, is this, right? Say this is just sort of an analogy that you can think of when you say that each and every man or woman's truth is unique. Say, for example, you bring 3 different types of people to witness the Grand Canyon, right? And so you go out to the Grand Canyon and you bring, different, whatever. You bring somebody, just for lack of a better, just say you're bringing like an architect, right? And an artist, and maybe you're bringing, somebody who's a musician, and maybe you're bringing somebody who, is whatever. It could be anybody, a medical professional. And they're going to, come and look at the Grand Canyon, innocently. And if they look at it innocently, they're just going to kind of see the Grand Canyon probably very similarly to how you and I see it, or anybody else is going to see it, right? It's almost as if you take a photograph of it and then look at the photograph. But then really each person, as they sit with their own reality and they kind of map their own reality on top of that reality, which is that one existence that's in front of you, they kind of can put 2 and 2 together. And all of a sudden, the Grand Canyon might inspire, somebody might hear a symphony, right? That orchestra conductor might hear a symphony, right?
Right.
The artist might see some great painting, or see it in certain ways. The architect may see a different way. So we all what I'm trying to say is we all bring those unique perspectives, and those unique perspectives then bring us to our unique truths in association with that. Mm-hmm. Right? And so then the truth of the Grand Canyon becomes a different truth to the musician as it did to the architect or artist, as it did to the medical professional who, whatever, maybe an herbalist who saw certain trees or certain the way the river was flowing, or, and they bring those perspectives and they arrive at a certain truth about the Grand Canyon that's unique to them.
Right.
And so all those truths are unique and they're all true.
Right. Exactly. Yes.
So they're not, it's not like only one truth can stand. All those truths stand independently of each other.
What just came up for me as you're speaking is truth being produced through the alchemy of perspective or perception. And so what I thought about is that there is the subjective and objective perspective or perception, and they're both inclusive. They're not diametrically opposed, right? So we have like scientism, like a scientific, almost like atheistic religion, stripping spirit or stripping life out of something to objectify it and make it as mechanical and material as possible, almost like separating it from ourselves. And then you have the subjective experience, which is unique to that own person's interpretation, where they're going to form their own unique truth. But that's not necessarily separate from the truth or whatever that is, the universal truth. It's like this interwoven dance of the soul almost, or maybe not almost.
Yeah. I mean, the whole funny thing is, when you say the truth like that, like the ultimate truth, it's really hard to even pinpoint, an ultimate truth. I mean, if you come at it from a sort of a spiritual, at least my spirituality / physics background, science background, whatever you want to call it, you could say that the only thing that is part of existence being kind of this base one reality, this, what you're calling an objective reality, an objective, basically it's looking upon existence with total innocent eyes. You could say that basically all of that existence is just comprised of three things, which I love to talk about, which are one, love, two, the adamantine particle, meaning the smallest indivisible particle, and three, the one spirit, which is, kind of this, everything's the one spirit, basically. There's no place where the one spirit's not. So it's basically this kind of tripart foundation of existence. So, if you could say that, there's one objective truth, that one objective truth would just be anything comprising those three things. If they don't comprise those three things, it basically stands in the court of illusion.
Yep, bingo.
So you could kind of almost say that, like if you want to say, there's like one objective truth or one ultimate truth, you could kind of sort of say that.
Is it fair to say that instead of a truth, there's a qualitative essence of what makes a truth? There's a quality to something that is quote unquote true.
Yeah. Then I was trying to describe that quality a little earlier. Basically, I just kind of, in review, you could kind of say that quality is sort of the breadth and depth of sort of consciousness. It's like as we grow in our consciousness, eventually we gain more and more, quote, truth. We gain more and more clarity and understanding. And basically, when you arrive at a truth, that truth basically sort of transcends the reality. It allows you to sort of behold the reality in a way that is a result of your growing consciousness. So you could say that the quality of truth is that, the quality of a truth is that which allows for the perception of that connection between the inner and the outer. It's like I said, that kind of golden thread that is distilled from your consciousness. It's that golden thread that's distilled from your beholding of your reality, and it's that golden thread that allows for the greater understanding, the greater workability. Yeah.
It makes complete sense. What just came up for me was the word, a lot of people say the word oneness. I want to use the word wholeness to describe what I'm kind of interpreting. Like, the sum of the parts or the whole is bigger than the sum of the parts. Well, from a psychological perspective and studying with Dr. John DeMartini for a while, his whole thing is about integration, right? Not disowning any part of ourselves through judgment, but actually integrating all of ourselves so we can come into true wholeness. So that's kind of what I'm seeing on a micro and macro perspective, right? Is actually to become truly whole within ourselves so we can actually innocently perceive the world accurately.
Yeah, I mean, that's working on slaying your ego. because until you really slay your ego, which is, for most people, a lifelong process, if they're even focused on that track to begin with, until you do that, you're always in sort of a slight state of subtle judgment. Whether it's yourself, like you said, some part of yourself that you're judging, like, so you don't feel whole in yourself, or some part of your reality that you're judging, whether it's, who knows, another person you're judging, or a situation, or the events of the world, or whatever it is. So, and most people, I've it's a constant yoga for myself to constantly work on, dissolving and slaying my own ego. And I'm trying to think if I've ever met anybody in my life who's I feel has gotten close to that. I probably have brushed up, now that I think about it, with a few people in my lifetime who have, kind of gotten close to that state of egolessness as adults. But the vast majority of people who I've met who are in that state of egolessness are all under the age of 3. And that's really the greatest teacher of all. If you really want to watch someone in an egoless state. Watch somebody who's 3 years old, and that's a great learning lesson too. Because they're just kind of calling it as it is. They don't have any agendas other than, of course, making sure that they feel happy and okay most of the time. But they don't have the kind of agendas and filters and judgments that an adult human ego and human mind has, which is a lot more insidious and a lot more devilish. And so anyway, I think it's a worthwhile pursuit. I think, it's basically at the crux of any sort of spiritual path, basically.
Yeah, no, 100%. I want to take it back, because you mentioned the 3 principles that basically makes up truth, let's say. I want you to expand on those 3 principles. I know exactly what you're talking about because I've heard you talk about it many times. I want you to kind of just share a little bit more on that. And then I want to talk about a little bit about your background, because you are a Stanford trained rocket scientist, physicist. Like when you talk about science, just so everyone knows, like you're an actual scientist, and your story is hilariously entertaining to me. Just the irony of the whole thing. So I'd love to get you to share a little bit about that, and then we'll lead into some more fun stuff.
Sure. Well, I mean, the ultimate truth is God. I mean, basically, God is the foundation of that 3 component basis of existence. So, and I love to use the word God because it's sort of I don't know, at least in my little realm,
Yeah, me too.
it's sort of underutilized, or it's sort of overly judged. And it's at least in our culture, God is pretty much a very easy thing to understand, because most people have grown up with this idea or concept of God. But basically, you could the way I look at God is as the source of all the love in existence, and it's inexplicable. The source it's an infinite supply. It's the foundation of all the universes. It's most likely the cause behind gravity, behind every single fundamental force that theoretical physicists study. Obviously, love commands the adamantine particles, literally, and it resonates with the one spirit. So you could say God being the foundation of that whole thing, it's one and the same. I mean, that 3-part component, you could say, is God. The challenge is our minds are finite, right? So at the most, the only way we can really totally, as human beings, I think, experience God is just experiencing the love that we are, and experiencing anytime we experience love in any form, you are experiencing the God, you are experiencing the energy of God. And the people on the planet who have pursued God in their lives are typically and I'm not saying that there's a bazillion ways to pursue God and it's all an individual thing, but they're typically, seeking a return to God in some way, a connection. And for me, myself, I think the foundation of that has been about 20 years ago, I learned of, kind of this portal in the center of my soul that, Christianity is called the Sacred Heart, but there are a lot of different names for it. But it's this basic sort of interdimensional portal, if you will, through which your unique love that is commanding everything in your life is flowing. And this love that's flowing, that's the love that is you, is also connected to the source love, to God. So that's why, you always hear people saying, well, go within or enter the kingdom as a little child, that innocent child, the egoless child, right? Because that is a really sacred space, and it's an innocent space. And the space is an energetic space. It's a quantum physics phenomenon. and it opens up. Like, I think, the Eastern religions liken it to sort of like the lotus flower, right? The 1,000-petal lotus flower. Well, the more you do, quote, spiritual work in whatever form it could be, it could be service or meditation or whatever it is for you, going to church or other organizations, whatever it is, the more that you do these things, the more that you slay your ego, the more this quantum physics portal opens up, and you feel it. You become more in touch with your soul. You become more in touch with your love and more in touch with and it's an ongoing opening and flowering. And I say that without a shadow of a doubt from my own personal experience. So it's worthy to pursue, for sure. It's really, it's your power. The funny thing is, the mind, being that we're mostly in a mind-dominated world and mind-dominated society, it feels a little threatened by this power. But the mind itself doesn't have any of this power. The mind is just literally a computer. It's a logic machine. It's great at understanding probabilities and math and structure and figuring out how to integrate, our souls into this 3D reality, this 3D structure. But if you look out in the world, typically it's a lot of minds leading around a lot of minds, and all these minds don't have any fundamental power, and as a result, they kind of keep running into the same little maze. They're running around in a maze.
Right.
They're trying to get from point A to point B, thinking that once they're in point B, they're going to be happier. But when they arrive at point B, they realize that they're no happier than when they arrive in point A, typically.
Yeah.
That's what happens when the mind is running the show, and it's leading other minds through the maze. And you get to one room and you have a little party. You get to another room and it's bad, and you get to another room. And after a while, it's like, okay, time to check out, because you kind of seen it, done it all, and it's like, well, might as well check out. But at the end of the day, it's like, gosh, was that all that there was to life? And then you hear stories of other people who have pursued a different type of life and have pursued connection with the energy of God in a big way, into a way where it's miraculous, to where you're hearing real stories from real people of anything from interacting with angels to other miracles, and so this is the power of love, because love is the foundational energy of everything.
Yes.
And so it's really about first recognizing that we're beings of love, and then opening that up more and more, tuning into that more and more. That's where your power is. That's where your mission is. That's where your contentment is. That's where and the funny thing is, I feel when you're there, I just, from my own experience, when you're there, when you're in your love and you're in your soul, the outside world just becomes less interesting. It just does. I don't know what to say about that, but at least it does for me. Yeah.
The entertainment factor goes down.
Yeah, words become very boring after a while.
What was coming up for me when you're talking about the mind, I was thinking about Maxwell Malt's book, Psycho-Cybernetics. And, that was written all those years ago. And, he really related the mind as a heat-seeking missile. And so, you kind of like have to plug in the software program or whatever the belief system is, the paradigm, whatever your software upgrade program is. I relate this whole kind of nervous system to an operating system. So if you have a software program that's running the show, then your mind is always going to be fixated in localizing itself to a particular focus based on a program. And so I feel like that disconnect between the head and the heart is a really interesting thing to look at, because and a lot of this has come out actually through our conversations early on in my journey, when I was making that personal development leap from more the mind and more of just like what I could do with my body and the identity around who I thought I needed to be, and actually going deeper into the sacred heart. That's how I knew about that, was through you and our conversations, and it started and through, your chocolate, which definitely helped open the heart, which we'll talk about. And I started in, studying like heart math. I really started to understand like, okay, this physical heart that we have is an electromagnetic generator unlike anything else that we have. So it makes sense to me that maybe that's actually where the power is, and the mind is more like a servant or it's like a funnel, right? Like it funnels the energy and it can point it in a particular direction, right? It's like that laser, but where does the power come from? And so I'd like to kind of talk about that.
Well, I like that. It makes me think of a great analogy, which is the analogy of the archer, the archer analogy. Basically, yes. if you think of an archer, okay, the archer, the bow, you've got an archer and a bow and an arrow, right? Well, the arrow or arrows are your thoughts.
Wow.
Okay, the bow is your mind, and the archer is your love.
Ooh.
So you can have all the thoughts in the world, and you can send them out into the universe all over the place. But unless, like you said, like what you're saying, unless you corral them in and focus in on one target, you're kind of you're wasting a lot of energy, because you're sending out a lot of random arrows all over the place, 360 degrees in this sphere. And nothing's ever going to get accomplished.
And you're going to get adrenal fatigue and thyroid issues in the process.
The burnout, right? Classic burnout, right?
Yes.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's why I said about the maze, right? It's like, okay, let's go, go down this hall and then the party, and then go down to, okay, after a while you get to point B and you're burnt out. And you look back, you go, God, I wish I was back at point A. It's kind of like, like I said, it's like firing those arrows all over the place. Well, anyway, like I said, the bow is your mind, but the power is the love. Unless you have the love behind it, the energy, actually, nothing's going to happen. You can have a bazillion thoughts. In fact, thoughts are not primal at all. Thought is just a connecting link. Mm-hmm. Everything has thoughts. Even a rock has thoughts. From a quantum physics standpoint, put it this way: when you get hungry, guess what? Your hunger is a thought.
Wow.
Okay, it's in other words, all of structure is connected through thought. In other words, thought is a communication link. Thought is a communication link. So hunger is giving you the thought. Something in your body is giving you the thought that you're hungry. That's, you see what I'm saying? So thoughts are a bazillion, a dime a dozen, if you will. They're just these communication connecting links that connects everything. All right. Now, idea is a little bit better. Right? An idea is usually a series or a matrix of thoughts that have sort of coalesced into reality. So in other words, like the idea of a light bulb. Once the idea has coalesced into reality, like the idea of a light bulb, and it's like, quote, one with God, one with those three components, right? Adamantine particles, love, the one spirit brings purpose. So when that coalesces, then you've got an idea, and the idea typically will coalesce into a 3D reality, like a table or a light bulb. And once it does, it's there forever. The idea of a light bulb is always going to be there. But thoughts come and go. Thought, like I said, they're just communication. And when you bring a whole bunch of thoughts within experience and within a context, you can create ideas. Ideas are rare.
Wow.
Ideas are a result of consciousness.
Oh, man.
And even, you have to remember, even consciousness is not primal. What's primal is love and awareness. Consciousness arises out of awareness. Awareness is primal.
Right.
Like if you were to strip down all your mind stuff, all your identities, even your physical body, everything, and you go deep in your soul to where your love is, and you can feel that I amness. You can feel, right, the I am, that I am, that I am. It's this ongoing sort of presence flow. It's just this inner whatever. And we'll go there in a second, because you remind me of a little exercise we can do if you're up for it.
Yes.
But yeah, so consciousness is a result of having a lot of thoughts within a context and and experience. So we grow in our consciousness as we live our life. As we, especially as we bring in things innocently without judgment, you'll grow and grow and grow in consciousness very quickly. If you have lots of judgments, you're not going to grow in your consciousness. It's like slamming a door. It's like slamming a door to the growth in your consciousness. Your ego is your biggest limitation. I'll guarantee that right now.
Totally.
The number one limitation in any human being's entire life, period, is ego. Period. End of story. So if you can get rid of the judgments, then you can grow in consciousness. And so from there, as you grow in consciousness, your ideas can coalesce more and more into greater and greater ideas, and a lot of them will manifest.
This is so brilliantly explained and articulated. Such a seemingly complex, something that is not complex at all, but can be complexified through the mind. But the way that you're able to break it down is quite amazing. And the thing about judgment, like this has been a whole journey for me ever since I met John DeMartini. I was like on it with these judgments. I was like, anything that I'm judging is a bias. It's a cognitive bias, certainty bias, some kind of bias that I have that by its very nature, whether right or wrong, is creating a barrier. It's creating a block. That's the nature of a judgment, because I know when I have a judgment, I feel contracted. My heart constricts, and that's all I need to know at this point. I need to rationalize it or understand why it is. I know my heart, it feels contracted. So the only antidote of it is to open my heart so that judgment can dissolve, and I can actually have a real, authentic connection with whatever that was that I was previously judging.
Absolutely. It's really important to recognizing yourself all the time and work on dissolving your ego, melting it away. In fact, even seek out opportunities to do that. If you want to get motivated and aggressive about it, you can actually seek out opportunities to melt away and dissolve your ego.
Yeah, like getting in a relationship.
It could be getting into a relationship. It could be asking for forgiveness. It could be doing things that you feel are very embarrassing to you.
Wow. Yes.
Or very or causing you a lot of shame. I mean, there's a lot of stuff actually that you can do to work on dissolving your ego. You could just act silly. You could do stuff in realms where you would normally never ever do it in a bazillion years because you're too afraid. Mm-hmm. And the only thing, what are people afraid of? Like when all of a sudden you feel limited, right? You feel like, oh man, I'm afraid to do this. Mm-hmm. Typically, you're afraid that either somebody else is going to judge you for doing it, or you're going to judge yourself for doing it. And whether you fail or not, it doesn't matter. Somebody else is going to judge you about that, or you're going to judge yourself about that.
You're in a merry-go-round of judgment no matter what you do.
That's right. So you're in fear of judgment. Outside physical death, the only thing that any human being is typically afraid of is judgment. That's it. That's it. If you boil it all the way down.
Right.
And so that's
wow.
It's just this huge subject, and it's and the ego is afraid to let go of itself. It doesn't want to. Because a lot of times that means letting go of your personality. Right. I mean, if you ever have kids, or most parents out there listening probably would recognize this. If you watch your kids grow up, I have a 17-year-old daughter now. But when she was a little toddler, she didn't really have a personality. And then you start seeing the personality develop over the years. And it takes different twists and turns, and it goes through different phases, and it's developing along with the ego, and they kind of develop hand in hand, and they the personality is there to kind of support the ego's wants, wishes, and desires, and the ego's a whole huge subject all in itself. Right. Totally. I don't want to make this all about the ego, right? Because that's just a huge subject that you can dive deep into in books and on. The thing that the ego is actually kind of, so in a lot of ways, frightened of. And that is the Sacred Heart. And you talked about it, and that's why I want to do this exercise, because
Yes.
Every human being actually has 3 hearts. 3. It's kind of weird. It's like, wow, 3. What does that mean? Well, there's the physical heart, the pump, that's pumping blood, right? And that's a great symbol for the Sacred Heart, because it's kind of the center of your, of what supports your body with nourishment, right? Oxygen and nutrients, and right, your blood is taking all the oxygen, nutrients to all your cells, right? So it's a great symbol. There's the heart chakra, which is actually part of your mind complex. The mind is actually two parts. It's your brain and nervous system, which is like a DNA biocomputer, and it runs electrically, all on plus and minus electrical charge, ones and zeros, like a binary. Our computer systems all are running on ones and zeros, right? So your mind's made up of that, your whole nervous system, your brain, and it's also made up of an electromagnetic field, which totally surrounds your whole body, kind of in a big sphere. So it's a 2-part system. Well, the electromagnetics of your whole body, which are also finite in nature, by the way, those electromagnetics make up your whole chakra system. So the 7 chakras that especially are known in Eastern religions and thought and so on, are basically physically represented by electromagnetism. And so there is a heart chakra. There's that heart center chakra, which is an electromagnetic center. The Sacred Heart is not connected to electromagnetism directly, but it is indirectly. So the Sacred Heart is interdimensional. Electromagnetism is in this dimension. Electromagnetism is in the conservational field of energy, which is the biggest structure that we're aware of in existence, in our universe, if you will. But the Sacred Heart is connected to God and infinity. The Sacred Heart is interdimensional. And it allows primal magnetism, which is a form of magnetism it's independent of electricity. Primal magnetism I only call it magnetism because it's attractive in its nature. But right. I don't know if it's a little bit tricky to even call it magnetism. But basically, it's the physical result of love. In other words, when love interacts in this 3D dimension, it's interacting using what's called primal magnetism, and the feeling that you feel as a human being when you're feeling this love flowing is the passion. It's a passion. It's that emotion of passion in your soul. Yes. That emotion of passion, or sometimes. Sometimes you get goosebumps all over, right? That love is flowing. It's like that passion, right? Mm-hmm. That is the primal. That's your love. That's the primal magnetism flowing. Now that love energy converts into electromagnetic energy. That's why I said it's connected. It's not directly connected. Right. That love and that primal magnetism can convert into electromagnetism for the electromagnetic energy of your body. That's why the more you open in your love, the more you let your love flow, the healthier you're going to be. Period. Right. Period. Because what happens is that love gets converted right into electromagnetic energy that is feeding and fueling and supporting your whole body. Anyway, so there's this Sacred Heart, okay, this connection to other dimensions and infinity, right, where all your love is flowing, your unique love. Each person's love is unique. All right. It actually has a physical location in your physical body. It's not in the center of your heart, the physical pump. It's not even in the center of your heart chakra. It's not. It's a third location. That's why I said human beings have 3 hearts. And the third location for anybody is always in a slightly different place. I mean, it could be in the same place for you and me, for example, but we don't really know. But it varies. And only you will know when you're there, because you'll be able to feel it. It's a feeling. And this is the little exercise I want to do with you, which is basically take your awareness to, say, your left knee right now. Right? Just go right into your left knee and feel it. And all of a sudden, now that your awareness is in your left knee, can you sort of feel your left knee in a sense?
Yeah.
You kind of feel it, right?
Yeah.
Well, the very fact that a few seconds ago you weren't thinking about your left knee, so you weren't feeling your left knee, kind of tells you right there that you're at least more than just your physical body. Because if you were just your physical body all the time, it would suggest that you would only just be feeling your physical body all the time. But your awareness a few minutes ago wasn't in your left knee. For all intents and purposes, you didn't even know you had a left knee. You weren't feeling it.
Right.
You weren't aware of it. So that's an important thing just to notice within yourself, right? Okay, now go back into your left knee, take your awareness back into your left knee, and ask yourself this question. Does that feel like the center of your being? Does that feel like the totality of who you are? Does that feel like the center of the totality of who you are?
No.
Okay, so the fact that you were able to, and most people can answer that quickly. You answered that quickly, and most people can answer it quickly. And the fact that you answered it quickly suggests a couple things. First of all, it suggests that there is a center.
Yep.
Okay. Because if you weren't sure, then that suggests that maybe there isn't a center. Right? So that's the main thing. So it suggests that there probably is a center. Okay. And the other thing is, it's this innate thing. You didn't have to calculate anything there.
Right.
It wasn't a probability thing. It had nothing to do with working out formulas to figure out if that was your center. You just kind of intuitively felt it, knew it wasn't the center of who you are. So take your awareness to someplace else. Take it, say, to the middle of your throat. And ask yourself the same question.
No, but it's a whole lot closer.
Okay, great. Take yourself to the middle. Take your awareness to the middle of your brain.
Definitely not my center.
Okay. So zero in on your center.
Well, there you go. I mean, from a body perspective, it's this whole where the solar or lunar plexus is, and then right in. See, the way that I feel it too, and I already kind of intuitively know what that feels like for me, because a friend of mine pointed out at one point when I was at a low point in my life, I was kind of like this. So I was crunched over. My energy was a little gravitational, and he said, "Do this. Push your heart out." Right, and immediately when I pushed my heart out, my shoulders went into total alignment. And when I was speaking, it was like it was I speaking. It wasn't some program or some, whatever I was going through in my life or some story. It was like, boom, I felt my power and that centeredness. I felt completely centered within myself. So that's where I feel that right there.
It's huge. It's like Tony Robbins. He loves that whole physiology and state change, right? It's like change your physiology, change your state, right? Well, we're physical human beings. We're integrated, right? And so, it so happens that when somebody's kind of stuck in their mind and their ego, and especially if there's a lot of negativity going on inside, it kind of it affects our physicalness, our what's the word, physiognomy or whatever you call it.
Physicality.
Yeah, the physicality, right? And so you can do the, like he said, you can do the other. If you actually kind of do this, it brings your awareness into kind of the center area where your soul and sacred heart is. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right? It just, so you're kind of doing it from the other way. You're physically doing it to drop in more, right? You can go both ways. And so that's a huge thing, is to practice going there and locating that spot. And for some people, some people can slip right in. Some people might take some time. It might take some practice, some yoga, some meditation to feel right in. That is, for most people, this spot is located between the spine and the physical heart. It's usually centered along the spine, but between the spine and the physical heart, and sometimes a little below the heart, sometimes a little above the physical heart. It just depends on who you are. But you can eventually zero in on it more and more. And really, I would say that the most important thing in life, one of the most important things is to go there often, live there, be there as often as you can in your meditations, in whatever you're doing throughout your life. And when you're there, you can feel it. And when you're there, other people can feel it too. Because when you're in your heart, you're naturally out of your mind, and your ego starts to shut down more and more and more. Your ego becomes this little chatterbox that you're turning the volume down on. And you just keep turning. The more you're in your heart, the more that eventually the ego just gets muffled out. And it gets to the point where it's not even there anymore. It really, it's I've been there. And it's powerful. And the great thing about it is when you're there, you're free. You're liberated. You're more free than you can even imagine. It's beyond freedom. Mm-hmm. So that's such a key thing for people to do, I think. And it doesn't matter what context, what religion, what spiritual path, whatever it is. I mean, it's been my spiritual journey for the last 20 years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's, I mean, so brilliant. So many incredible nuggets of wisdom in all of that. And I'm feeling into where we're at right now, just with time and with the transition of topics. We could do an entire episode just on cacao. And I'm actually tempted to suggest in live time that maybe we do that. Maybe we set up a part 2 to actually do that, because the level of knowledge, insight, perspective that you have, and obviously I've been a chocolate advocate and chocoholic for the last decade, largely thanks to you. So I'm kind of feeling, actually, I'd like to set up a part 2 with you as soon as you're available, just so we can go deep in that subject. Does that feel good?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm more than thrilled to do that.
Yes. Okay. Awesome. So everyone, stay tuned. We're going to do that soon. So let me take advantage of where we're at right now with the time that we have. The Sacred Heart. I want to. Here's what I want to do. This is what just came up for me. Glenda Green, Love with No End. You and David kind of introduced me to that book, and I have it on my bookshelf, and it's holding space there, along with Autobiography of a Yogi and all those good books. They kind of just hold space. It's like, even if you don't read it, it's there. It's just holding a field for you.
Absolutely. I believe that wholeheartedly.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of great quotes that I pulled out of it just through synchronicity. One of them is, I think I heard David say this. This is where I got it. Death is a clearinghouse for false identities.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, so again, it comes down to, what is an identity? And this is such a deep subject. In a lot of, that's a great statement, and it's true in the sense that really what drives us more than anything to our physical death are mistaken identities.
Wow.
Because what is your actual one true identity?
I'm not even sure how to respond to that from an identity perspective.
Well, let me say, everybody's one true identity is the love that they are.
Okay.
So imagine being that 3-year-old. Go back to when you were 3 years old. All right. And feel like, if you can imagine like yourself when you're 3, feel what it was like to be you at that age. Like what was the feeling of you? What was your love like? What was your love about in that real innocent state? that identity, that feeling, and those little inclinations and all the little things you knew and felt about yourself and felt about the world and whatever at that young age is your true identity. It's an identity in innocence. There hasn't been all these layers and all these judgments and all these other identities and these ideas and everything piled onto your mind and piled into your ego. What happens is, if you're living that love all the time, if you're in your heart all the time, that love has the ability to keep you alive as long as you want. I mean, heck, in the Bible, if you believe the Bible, back way at the early stages of humanity, we lived to be 1,000 years old. And who knows, sometimes you hear crazy stories. And like I said, miracles happen. You hear about crazy stories of saints and yogis living up in the Himalayas of thousands of years old. I don't know if you've heard those stories.
I've heard, of course.
So what gives them these abilities? It's not some identity. It's not some technique even.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's love.
Right.
Love is love. I got news for you. It is love. They're masters of love. All those avatars and gurus and saints, they're masters of love.
Oh man, this brings up an interesting thing that you and I both are very familiar with, is the health nut, the health freak, the health advocate, the health crusader who dies of a heart attack or something ridiculous like that. And they actually were eating like a perfect diet, quote unquote. And like, but they're so high strung, they're so like evangelical about it, where there actually isn't that much love, right? And then, so what's that all about?
Well, yeah, that's the whole point being, is like that their identity drove them to the grave.
Wow.
Right? I mean, people don't know when to let go. I mean, people don't know when to chill out. People don't know when to let go of the flow. Right. I mean, the holy flow, right? I mean, when you're being the love that you are, you're going with the holy flow. And that holy flow is, life is love in action. That's the definition. Whoa. That's the definition of life.
Whoa.
That's the definition of life, is love in action. That's the definition of life.
Man, a lot of people are not living life right now.
There you go. There you go, right? And time is structure and action. That's all the time. That's all the time is structure and action. Structure is finite, right? Structure. And when I say structure, I mean, of course, the physical structures around us, but even mental structures. Constructs, ideologies, religions, whatever, all this sort of stuff. Basically, time is just another name for change, and time is relative. Depends on the reference frame, right? Einstein proved that with general relativity and special relativity. Basically, based on gravitational fields, your reference point of time changes. Clocks go at different rates, or with speed, right? Reference frames going at very fast speeds, their clocks slow down, right? So same with heavy gravitational fields. The clocks slow down relative to another field where the gravity is. So time, what I'm trying to say is time is just a measurement of a change in structure, and even that change in structure is relative. It depends on it depends on your speed, and it depends on the gravitational field. So anyway, love is independent of that. This is the interesting thing. Love is both in this world and outside of this world. Whenever when you hear like, oh, be of this world and be not of this world, that's just meaning be the love that you are. The love that you are is in this world. When you're in your physical body, you've incarnated in this physical world. But when you're outside of this world, you're also just being the love that you are, because the love that you are is also outside of this world. It's connected through other dimensions. Instantaneously, of course, connected to God, the foundation of all existence. So anyway, getting back to identities, identities are tricky because there's so much, and I know we're coming to the end, right? But I just want to say this one thing about identities.
Yeah.
I just want to say this one thing about identities. It's important because we live in a mind-dominated culture and an ego-dominated culture. The ego does everything. The ego is a slippery, little sinister character you could ever imagine. It'll do anything. It'll do anything to support its own existence. And and I like to point this out. One thing that it did and does is the whole positive mental attitude industry.
Wow. Yes.
That whole thing, which is, it's not bad, it's not good. I'm not here to judge it. I'm just pointing it out that it's identities, and it's good in the sense that you can use identities for your own positive benefit, right? Like you were a big fan of Bruce Lee, right?
Right.
And he inspired you to become a martial artist, right?
Yes.
And that was a positive experience for you, right?
Yes.
You learned lots of the lessons, right?
Yes.
So at one point in your life, you incorporated this identity of a martial artist. You wanted to be like Bruce Lee, etc. Right? And this took you to states of achievement that you're happy with and you feel great about. Wonderful. So that's a positive identity that you utilized, right? Mm-hmm. Well, there are also other that same identity can lead you down a dark alley.
Right.
If your ego is too strong. I'll give you an example. Say, for example, you know, I don't know, you're out at a party and, you know, some rascals show up and, you know, they're martial artists too, but they've got big egos and, you know, they start doing some bullshit at the party and all of a sudden they hear that you're a martial artist and, you know, all of a sudden they're like, hey, you know, it's starting to throw down challenges, right? Like, hey, oh, you think you're so bad, right? You know, oh, you think you're such a good martial artist, blah, 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 right? Right? So they start challenging you to different stuff, starting to beat up on your ego, right? And so then you have to make this choice. What are you going to do? Are you going to prove to them that you're a champion, a martial artist champion? Are you going to walk away? Are you going to be humiliated in front of your friends? So depending on your ego, you can make a very dysfunctional choice.
Oh, yeah.
You could do something that causes harm or even death.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Right? That's just one example. Here's another example. Here, say you're a great mother. Right? You're a great mother. And so because you think you're a great mother, you do all the things a great mother does, which is great because you have great kids as a result. Your kids are happy, healthy, well-adjusted, et cetera, et cetera. But then all of a sudden something weird happens. Unexpected, not in your control. Just some weird thing. Like I don't know, you were at the shopping mall and your kids all of a sudden ran away and all of a sudden, like, you know, one got lost. And then one got kidnapped. And who knows what happens after that. But then all of a sudden, like, all the other moms in your mom's group are saying, like, whoa, she's not a good mom. She wasn't looking after her kids. And like, oh, and then all of a sudden she starts feeling terrible. Not only that, you know, she lost her kid, of course. Maybe the kid comes back. Great, they rescue her, wonderful. But still, you know, she beats up on herself because she thinks that she wasn't a good mom. Right. Or she even does something dysfunctional, like somebody like some of her mom group says, oh, you says some derogatory comment. She gets into a nasty fight with a friend of hers. And they lose their friendship over it.
Happens all the time.
This is common all the time. It's happening 24/7 in all of humanity, constantly. This is all a result of the ego. And I won't even dive into what the ego actually is right now.
I was gonna go there, but I was just like, there's no way.
That's a whole nother hour conversation on what the ego actually is. But to make a long story short, identities are tricky. Identities can be used for positive things, but then they can also be your demise. And there are only a few cases where identities are positive, and that's when they cause you into acts of heroism. Like, say you're a great fireman, and as a result, you go and save the kitty out of the tree, and you're a hero. Or say you go and save 1,000 lives out of a burning building. Or say 9/11 happens, and all the fire departments down there, and the great firefighters are saving thousands of people. Even some of them die. They put their own life in jeopardy to save other people's lives. It's only the energy of an identity and how powerful the ego is in supporting that identity that allowed that person to take that action in the face of that danger. Yeah. But these are exceptions. Most of the cases, identities turn out to be dysfunctional, and the only reason that heroism is even needed is because of the fact that people aren't focusing on the love that they are,
which creates chaos.
That's the funny thing about the whole thing. The only reason that heroism is even there to begin with is because of a lack of love.
Right.
The power of love can supersede all of that. The power of love eventually can extinguish the need for heroism.
Mm-hmm. Right. This is there's a lot there. Wow. I thought of one more quote from Glenda Green, and it relates back to your definition of life. I never thought of it this way until you mentioned it, so I might as well just mention it here. One of my favorite quotes from her is, "Learn to live from the living."
Oh, yeah. Well, there are only 4 rules of success. Everybody has their rule book of success, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's the 8 rules, the 2 rules, the 10 rules, the 20 rules of success, right?
Yeah.
So from Jesus' perspective, there were, and just so your viewers know, that the name of that book, if anybody wants to pick it up, it's called Love Without End, Jesus Speaks by Glenda Green. Originally published in 1998-99, and now she's coming out with her 20th anniversary edition, which is really cool. I don't know if she was signing 500 copies on her website, so I don't know if those are still available. For people who are into it, go to her website, which is lovewithoutend.com. But anyway, we'll plug for Glenda there. Basically, these are all basically Bible quotes. I mean, basically, it's seek life in the living, let the dead bury the dead.
Right.
Okay. Always seek life in the living, let the dead bury the dead. The four rules of success are: number 1, be the love that you are. Okay. Number 2, seek life in the living, let the dead bury the dead. Number 3, always do the right thing. And number 4, forgive. If you do those 4 things in your life all the time, you'll be successful at whatever you call success. It doesn't matter. You do those 4 things all the time in your life, you will be successful regardless of your definition of success.
Right.
If you just be the love that you are, which is just, again, living in your heart, living, getting out your ego, getting out your mind, being the love that you are. Okay, that's your core identity anyways. It's your only true identity is the love that you are. Okay? Seek life in the living, let the dead bury the dead. In other words, don't let your mind, your ego, get overly attached to structure. When the structure has served its purpose, let it recycle. Let it go. Right? That's why this is the great, so this is a great thing to point out between Eastern and Western thought. Right? Because especially since you're a martial artist, in martial arts and Eastern thought and religion, basically the idea is to not be attached. Right? Not be attached to outcomes, not be attached to anything really, right? What is that really talking about? It's about the ego. It's the ego's natural, and okay, we're going to have to define the ego, at least the very, very basic definition. The broad basic definition is the ego is the mind's self-generated defense mechanism to protect the mind's investments in structure. I'll just repeat that one more time. The ego is the mind's self-generated protection mechanism to protect the mind's investments in structure. Structure could be an identity, could be any person, could be anything, any structure at all. Yeah. So what Eastern thought said, look, don't get attached to structure. In other words, that is equivalent to saying slay your ego. Because that's what the ego's purpose is defend your attachments to structure. Right? So that's been in what, so the other thing, the thing that gets confusing, this is why I want to bring this in right real fast, is that passion, because a lot of people confuse attachment with passion. Well, how does that work? What are we doing here? What are we doing? What about passion? Don't I have to be passionate about something to manifest it in my life? Aren't I supposed to take that love that's flowing through me, through my Sacred Heart portal, and feel that passion so I can, through my primal magnetism, draw into my life everything that I need to fulfill my purpose in life and fulfill my covenant? Absolutely yes. These are two totally different things. You're comparing apples to oranges. However, somebody who's not studying it may confuse them as diametrically opposed. They're not. They're both necessary. In fact, you can't really have one without the other. They support each other. When you're letting go of attachments, ego attachments, you're automatically allowing this to open up more. And when this opens up more, you're automatically letting go of ego attachments. So they go hand in hand. So anyway, again, be the love that you are. Seek life in the living. Let the dead bury the dead. In other words, if the structure has already served its purpose, let it go. Always do the right thing.
I have to just get your thought on this real quick, because there's a difference between doing things the right way and doing the right thing. You can do really stupid things or counterproductive things to the T, but they're not necessarily doing the right thing, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So what is the right thing? That's been the age-old thing that people have battled over forever.
Right.
It's like you know how many people have died around the subject of truth? It's basically the same thing. It's around the subject of what's the right thing to do. You know, the right thing to do is the truth, right? Well, this is the thing, that it's again a dynamic thing. It's like the truth. The right thing is a dynamic thing. It's not set in stone. It's not a formula. It's not a set of facts. It's a dynamic thing. So how do you determine what the right thing is? Well, you have to have to look at what morality is. What morality is change for the better. That's all it is. That's all it is. And this links to there's a passage in the Bible that talks about where the first become last and the last become first. This is basically the subject of morality. In other words, somebody who's a bum in the gutter, a murderer, whatever, ex-con, but they have taken the steps to change their life for the better. In other words, they are pursuing a life of morality. It doesn't matter where you come from. If you're pursuing a life of morality, which is changing your life for the better, you are doing the right thing.
Wow.
And on the flip side, if you live a life of propriety, where everything's perfect, you do everything according to the formulas, but you change nothing, you're actually doing the immoral thing.
Wow.
This is where the first become last and the last become first. Because, and that's the problem with, the ego, because the ego in a position of comfort and power, it doesn't want to change anything. It's, the demeanor of the ego is conservation and conservatism. That's the demeanor of anybody serving structure. And the ego, of course, defends structure. It serves structure. It's married to structure. So it's naturally going to take a conservative approach and focus on conservation.
Protection.
Right? So what is the moral thing to do? Typically, it's what is best for anybody or everybody in a situation.
Yep.
What's the best solution for everybody involved?
Win-win.
Win-win.
Yep.
Win-win. Win-win. And that can change. That can, so look at just like, look at dancing, for example. Dancing 100 years ago in our culture was viewed as like evil, like terrible, like you shouldn't dance because, you know, evil spirits will attach themselves to your soul. And, you know, in a lot of ways, dance was viewed that way, at least the kind of dance that we do. Now dance is viewed as a wonderful, amazing thing. Healthy, happy, change for the better.
Right.
So, you know, at one point, you know, so that, okay, and then finally forgiveness. Forgiveness is huge. Forgiveness is just that, oof, it's again a quantum level thing. Because when you forgive, what happens is when you have a relationship with anything, there's an exchange of adamantine particles. The love that you bring to the relationship, the love the other person or other thing brings to the relationship, okay, it creates like a marriage of adamantine particles, and there's an exchange of the particles. And the problem is if something happens, if typically egos get involved, there's judgment, there's whatever going on, and then and the relationship goes sour or south or whatever, then those particles that were exchanged are held hostage. Forgiveness is a quantum physics phenomenon that releases the particles. And so that's a huge thing, because until you do that, you're contracted. Your love is not really flowing completely. There's things holding you back. Forgiveness is all about freedom. Forgiveness is about, and true forgiveness is felt. It's felt on the soul level. And sometimes when you think you've done it, you still need to do more. I mean, myself, I went through a nasty divorce 10 years ago. Was it 10 years ago? It's been a long time now, back in the mid-2000s, but 15 years ago. But anyway, it was a custody battle, really tough custody battle for 2 years in court, really hard, really difficult. I won't even go into details. I had to do lots of forgiveness work around my ex-wife. And I've done so much around it. You know, we're, for the most part, friends today. I mean, it's not like we hang out all the time, but, you know, we get along civilly and as best we can for the sake of our daughter, of course. Now, I've done tons of forgiveness work, but you know what? I just unpeeled another layer of forgiveness work just recently. I mean, I'm talking the last couple months. And it was intense. It was like going through the fire. And it was actually something that was brought on through a physical practice I'm doing. You know, I didn't expect it. It brought me to my knees. So, you know, but it was, again, I felt it. I felt the release. I felt even more freedom after that. More and more freedom. So that's a huge thing. That's why I say, if you go, the ego doesn't like the concept of forgiveness, right? Can you go back and take your awareness back into your brain, the center of your brain? Now, once you're in there, ask me this: can your brain feel forgiveness?
No.
You're laughing.
I don't even need to go there.
You're laughing, right?
I'm tell you that right now.
Right? Your brain can't feel forgiveness, right?
Yeah.
It can't. Right? Yeah, the brain, the mind-brain complex, the ego complex, it views forgiveness as this weird intellectual concept. And at the end of the day, it's going to chalk it up as a karmic thing. It's going to say, well, if I forgive somebody, I'm going to have good karma.
Wow.
I'm going to be rewarded in the next life. That's how the ego and the mind treats forgiveness.
So it's what you're saying is that the mind treats forgiveness as a it's trying to find a transaction, which has nothing to do with forgiveness.
That's right. Because the mind is a bean counter. The mind's a logic machine. It's always wanting to balance the books right down to the last little penny.
That's amazing. I've never ever heard it explained like that before.
So, you know, anyway, that's, I don't know how we got, I can seek life in the living and let the dead bury the dead. Yeah, that's huge. Keep that one in front of you.
I mean, that was incredible, because all I was really getting at was like, like watch who you're, if you're following people that look like they're dying, then maybe those aren't the best health advisors or health gurus or spiritual gurus to be looking at. You took it to a whole nother level.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, ultimately it's, if you put anybody on a pedestal, eventually you're going to be disappointed. I mean, it's really,
that's another one right there. Mm-hmm.
Honestly, at this point, the only person I'd put on a pedestal is God. That's it. And that's you're just basically dealing with infinity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'll bring up as we're closing out, I'll bring up John DeMartini one more time, because what you just said reminded me to one of his great quotes, which is that nobody is worth putting, what did he say? He said, nobody's worth putting on a pedestal and nobody's worth putting on a pit. Everybody's worth putting in our heart.
Yeah, that's a good one. Absolutely. Love transforms. That's why, like I said in the Bible, it's, love your enemy, right? If you can love your enemy, that's a deep thing. That is, you could take a whole hour unpacking that right there.
The problem with that, Steve, is that if you love your enemy, you're not going to be motivated to go fight them anymore.
Well, that's true. That's true. And if you love your enemy, you're gonna realize that you are love. You're gonna realize that you're not your ego. Your ego won't allow you to love your enemy.
Right.
You gotta kind of really surrender your ego to love your enemy. And when you love your enemy, you'll there's a good chance you actually could become friends. That's
happened to me so many times, Steve, in the past, just getting into fights and challenges. And then eventually, after we got into the fight, then we became best friends. It's the weirdest thing. This happens to guys all the time. And, going through junior high and high school, you've probably been through it. You had like some kind of rivalry or some weird thing with another alpha male. And then all of a sudden, you guys realize you're more alike than ever. And then you just became best friends.
Yeah. I mean, so it's a lot. It's a huge thing, mm-hmm. You can't go wrong with love God with all your heart and your neighbor as yourself. That's basically the core of any true human religion, mm-hmm. So if you just follow those two things, and really do it, actually not just put it in your mind as some intellectual, ideal, but actually practice it.
Yeah.
I love what Anthony Robbins says. Most people know what to do, but they don't do what they know.
Right. That's the plight of our world.
Yeah. And so that's what it comes down to. It's really committing on an individual level to just do the things, and sometimes just baby steps. Most people are in overwhelm.
Totally.
Most people are just in overwhelm. We're in a system that has created a lot of overwhelm for a lot of people, most people probably. And so at best, it's about reaching out to community, and it's about taking little baby steps, whatever you can do in the moral direction. Think about that's a powerful statement. The first become last and the last become first. And that's baby steps will do that for anybody.
Yeah, incremental steps creates quantum leaps, but don't be so focused on the quantum leap. Take those necessary steps. One thing leads to another. Just keep moving in the moral direction.
Yeah, exactly. It's about the direction. It's that commitment to the direction. Doesn't matter. It's like, hey, if you've got to chop wood and carry water, fine. Chop wood and carry water. But at least you're chopping wood and carrying water for a good purpose, a good cause, a good direction.
Yes.
And
right.
You'll be okay.
Mm. Oh man. This was this was absolutely incredible. I'm so glad the conversation went in all the ways that it did. And I knew that I didn't even need to prepare for this. Like, why, it's just you and me talking, but there's a purpose and there's an impact. So much more can come through. And Wow. We really covered so many incredible areas. So grateful for you, Sacred Steve. And I'm grateful that we're going to be doing a part 2 on chocolate to really give not just the subject of cacao its due justice, but your knowledge and your experience with it. You know, that I'm excited about. So we'll connect on that. And Steve, do you have any other parting words? And let's make sure that everybody knows where to go to get the best chocolate ever.
Sure. Sacredchocolate.com for, amazing chocolate. Parting words, be the love that you are. Realize that you don't need to know in order to love. It's not like you have to figure out love or figure out how to become more loving. You are love. Love is at your core. Just be that love. So that's my message.
Timely message for all of us. Steve, as always, thank you so much for making the time to really dive deep with me. And this was incredible. What else can I say?
Hey, it's a blessing, Ronnie. I love you, and I always love sharing with you. And you're an amazing man, and your outreach is phenomenal, and you inspire so many people. So you inspire me. So thank you for the work that you do.
Thanks, brother. That means a lot to me, and I love you too. And looking forward to part 2.
All right. All the best.